Greetings everyone, welcome to my first update review for GT7. It's been quite a while since the last one I did for GT Sport, but I'm finally back to doing these, so let's get into what is a pretty interesting update. We kick things off obviously with the cars, and there are things to look at. The BMW M3 from 1997, the Ferrari 430 Scuderia, the Genesis X Grand Racer Vision Gran Turismo concept, the Lamborghini Gallardo LP564, the Roof RGT 4.2, and the Subaru Impreza Rally Car 1998. Let's start with the BMW. It's very planted, responsive but pointy. At times I felt I might have underdriven it just because I didn't want to go over the edge misjudging it, but the car felt very compliant in my hands. Next, the Ferrari. With no time behind the wheel of the base F430, I can only really judge this on its own, and my first impression is that it appears solid enough in the slower corners and such, but anywhere that involves flicking the car from left to right, or vice versa, it gets a bit hairy. I found myself often tiptoeing in some of the bits just to maintain the rear from getting loose. Touching the grass certainly doesn't do it much favors either, as one would expect in a mid-engine car. I expect with traction control and probably better hands, these are in nowhere near as much of an issue. On to the Genesis, which has the interesting honor of being the first Group 1 car I have ever driven, given the limited amount of time I have spent on the game. Solely judging it on its own, it feels very pointy. No rear end drama, no understeer that I felt. Straight away I could just push the car and the car responded. I didn't realize it had a hybrid system until afterwards, but from the time I spent with it, it felt very competitive to me. This feels like it could very well be a good contender for Group 1 owners in the right hands. And with it appearing to go alongside the already visible Group 3 and Group 4 offerings in the base game, it feels as if Hyundai has been officially replaced as the brand representative for Korea now that this car is here for Genesis. Next, the Lamborghini. Admittedly, the temptation to really tiptoe was in the back of my mind after my experience with the 430 Scuderia, but thankfully the all-wheel drive makes this a lot more manageable, even if I had a moment or two of overdriving where it basically saved me. It's a fun car to drive, as it's not understeery and not oversteery either. Just gotta remind myself to brake a bit earlier so I don't find myself overcooking it. Up next in line, the roof. Remember the clear hard time I had with the CTR3 and GT Sport? Well, thankfully this is comparatively less of a hard time. With it being heavily Porsche 911 based, as is tradition with many roof models, that distinct rearward pendulum effect can rear its head in certain high-speed corners. Thankfully outside of that, it's actually quite manageable, and even the slides themselves aren't life-threatening. Brakes are solid, turn-in feels pretty good, and most of the time it's not actually loose and all over the place. So a solid car that, other than some fast turns, not a lot to really worry about. And finally, the Subaru. With no dirt tracks along for me yet, as I record this, I just chose a track that by incredible coincidence happens to be corporately related. Imagine that. I could say, well, it's a Subaru, but it's more fair to say it is a Subaru rally car. Despite being on a circuit, the car is just brilliant, no questions asked. Braking, turn-in, mid-corner speed. It just has it all, really, including the turbo flutter and 90s rally car overrun. It's by all means what the ideal race car is. It just happens that this was a car that was built with dirt in mind, but it's not pretty bad at keeping on the black as well. Next is the big star of the update, of course, Eiger Norvand. Technically speaking, this is basically the Eiger Norvand short track from the previous games. Obviously, it's had changes like many return GT tracks, but it's more in line with high-speed rings in terms of how the basic layout is exactly the same, and it's only the scenic changes that have happened. Moving of the tunnel to become the new pit lane, as well as the wood bridge replaced with a more sturdy metal one. I find it a really nice if unexpected addition. It didn't take long for me to finding those ideal lines as I did in the PS3 generation games. A solid addition overall. By far what could be the biggest part of this update is the physics change. So many aspects from suspension, steering geometry, damper attenuation, and much more have been changed. Obviously, with such a massive change, this naturally means any leaderboard has been wiped with their respective demonstrations for circuit experience and license tests having been updated, as well as PP being adjusted on cars accordingly. While I haven't fully delved into tuning just yet, just the driving alone, I immediately felt a difference despite only having played for 2 weeks prior to this update. The Tokyo Circuit Experience video I posted for me was the biggest eye-opener in how different the physics were. The sort of speed and cornering I could do was simply not what I could even come close to doing on the previous physics. It's made me both excited and slightly nervous given the massive mountain I have to climb when it comes to the challenges, as well as the other races, and eventually the grind I will need to do for those expensive cars in the Legends car dealership. Some of the other major items of the update include the Nürburgring 24-hour and Autodrome Lago Maggiore full course now having Gran Turismo Sophie integration. For those that enjoy racing against Sophie, they might want to give these a go. Michelin is now being featured on the tires in the game. As far as I can tell, it's essentially the same as Brembo in that the product actually has a licensed brand name on it and not just a generic product name. Although this comes with the bonus of seeing the Pilot Sport 2 tires on various road cars. A new wheel shows up in the form of Pokal Custom Felgen, which comes with several wheels and also includes new preset decals for the livery editor. Work also gets some new wheels to join their lineup as well. And it wouldn't be a GT update without something added to Scapes, and this time Eiger is added, with several really cool shots for use. And that's a rough summary of the update. Overall, it's quite the update between the content as well as the major shakeup when it comes to the physics. As this is the first one for me after getting the game not too long ago, it's made an already interesting journey and trying to play catch up just that much more interesting. That's it for this review. Check the links in the description with the full list of official patch notes for both the official site as well as the undocumented changes thread I have on GT Planet, where you can read and or post changes that have not been listed in the official notes themselves that you might have spotted. For now, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you guys next time.